Leave that.
Okay.
Yes, I am recording.
You're ready?
All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Design Advisory Panel meeting June 9th, 2020. Another Zoom fest. So we have an agenda. I think everybody has a copy of the agenda. We're going to break with protocol and we're actually going to follow the agenda. It's very exciting. Number one, I'd like to call the meeting to order. And number two, I would like to move or have a motion for adoption of the agenda unless there's any questions or comments or additions to the agenda.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
Oh, right, you're jumping to number three, but that's okay.
Oh, okay. I approve the agenda.
Agenda,
I'll make a motion to accept.
Okay.
Second.
Seconded, and all in favor of adopting the agenda? Away we go. Item 3 is adoption of minutes. These are the minutes from our last meeting. Was it our last meeting?
Yes.
Yeah. So is it, I don't know if everybody's had a chance to read the minutes. Are there any questions or comments about the minutes? And if not, can we get Kevin to make his motion again to adopt?
Yes, I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
Okay, any questions? Kate seconds, and any questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Okay, we now have minutes adopted. So on tonight's agenda, we have one presentation. And somebody in the background. Okay.
That wasn't Christmas. Is that Victoria?
Regression, yes.
Okay, so I will ask, I think, are you going to introduce us? Okay, so Lisa will introduce the presentation this evening.
Okay. So at this meeting, we are considering a development permit application for a vacant parcel at 4851 Cedar Ridge Place. And what is being proposed is a residential building with 97 rental units and a commercial building with a gross floor area of 367 meters squared. The property is zoned mixed-use corridor, Core 2, and falls within DPA 9 for multifamily and commercial uses, and within DPA 5 for steep slope development. Both the General Development Permit Area Design Guidelines and the Steep Slope Development Permit Area Guidelines apply to the proposed development. That's my very short introduction.
Okay, thank you. So I think at this point the applicant is going to take control of the screen and give us a presentation. So, Kate?
I think Tony put a sign up saying he has no audio. I don't know. I just sent him a note.
Got it somehow.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
I think I'm okay. I'm sorry.
So can everybody see our screen?
Yes.
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 Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just introduce everybody first. I'm Raymond Beals. Beside me is Corinne Cadre, yes. With my office, he'll be giving the presentation, and then we got Chris Lundy acting on behalf of the general contractor and developer. And we got Victoria Stratford, landscape architect, and we got Scott Jensen somewhere. Okay, we just can't see him, but he's there. Who's with civil with Herald Engineering. So we'll start.
Okay. So basically the lot that we're developing is at the intersection of Cedar Ridge and Rutherford. As you can see on the screen, this is Cedar Ridge cul-de-sac, and Rutherford is at the lower right corner. The site is a steep slope. As you can see, it slopes from Rutherford up to the bulk of Cedar Ridge, and it slopes down towards the public pathway, and the slope is about, or the change in elevation is about 18 meters from top here to the bottom of the lot. We located the building at the back of the lot so that to give access, or to keep or to create an open space at the front of the building and to access the parkade from the Cedar Ridge with the maximum allowed slope towards the parkade level. In order to minimize the size of the building, we separated, or the massing of the building was split into two, and both ends of the building were softened. As you can see, the parkade is 2 meters beyond the faces of the residential building above, and we set back the fourth floor so that it does not seem as big from Rutherford or from pedestrian point of view from the street. Let's go to the perspective just to show you what that looks like from Rutherford. So this is the image, or this is the view from Rutherford. And as you can see, the building from any corner, it does not, or it seems to be split into multiple buildings and softened at the edges.
I'd just say one thing, there's a couple little different things that we have on our presentation than you have in your package in terms of some of the comments that we had last minute from staff. So.
Okay. Okay, so just an overview of the site layout. As I said before, the residential building is at the back of the lot, so it's from Cedar Ridge, it's at the back, and the Syria building is at the corner of Rutherford Road and Cedar Ridge. We use the difference in elevation to our advantage, so that, as I mentioned, the Cedar Ridge it slopes upwards from Rutherford, so there is two entrances to the parkade level. One at the beginning of Cedar Ridge and one at the end of the bulb there. Each goes to one of the levels of the parkade. And the main entrance is at the middle to facilitate or better use the interior spaces. And there are two exits at either end of the building. And both of these exits exit at Cedar Ridge, at the level of Cedar Ridge Street. So back to the mapping, as you can see, the parkade, or the mapping is that there is so the parkade is partially hidden from like the view. So from the Cedar Ridge side, you won't see the parkade at all, as you can see in the image as cover there. You won't see the parkade, and the residential building is situated on top of the parkade level. And the area at this corner there. We use planters on either end of the building to smoothen the transition from the landscape or the street view towards the building. And that applies also to the lower edge of the building. So there is a public walkway at this side of the building, so there are planters that make the transition from that parking pathway smoother. There was a comment from staff on site about when we met 2 weeks ago that the parkade might seem big. We addressed that by creating those planters and splitting or creating change in those elevations to break up the mass of the parkade. And this applies also to the side of the Rutherford Road where we had green walls and planters to hide the parkade as much as possible. The material choice of the building, as you can see, we opted out for Neutral colors, white and gray fiber cement panels, and concrete for the parquet. And we added an accent color of neutral cedar wood accent. Some of, like as you can see on the parquet, we actually painted some of the openings and added like colored glass panels, or these might be something else other than glass, to break up the mass of the parquet. Most of the surfaces of the building are actually located underground, out of sight and close to the city services. The garbage enclosure is far away from the residential building, but still accessible from the Cedar Ridge cul-de-sac. There's an amenity room at the upper corner towards the lake that is shared by all residents, and there is a fitness room that is also shared by all residents. Did I miss anything?
I guess I'll just pipe up and just say that where the building is also located is where the site's essentially all rock, so that was what was driving it to limit the excavation and the blasting of the rock. So again, it kind of follows the contours. When you go look at this elevation over here, you can see the amount of height that we have in terms of the height of the building along here. Anything else that you want to talk about architecturally, Chris, or to highlight in terms of something that we might have missed? Oh, he's muted.
Okay. I think I just want to go over the floor plans, parking and stuff. So, as mentioned before, the two parking each is accessed from separate entrance from Cedar Ridge, and each of the entrances is a two-way and exit. Most of the residential parking is underground in these two levels, and the services are in the middle there. Each unit has a storage unit underground. There are bicycle storage that is accessed directly from the corner of Cedar Ridge and Rutherford. And on the other side of the building, there is kayak storage that is accessed from the pathway that leads down to the lake. So just to show you where those exits are, the bike exit from here at this corner of the building, and the kayak storage exit at this corner. Entrances, and for fire truck access, the entrance from Cedar Ridge is wide enough to accommodate fire truck. And the garbage enclosure, as mentioned before, is at the upper or the eastern corner of the lot. There is a dog run for residents to walk their dogs at the eastern corner as well. Most of the units are one bedroom, two bedrooms, and on the upper floor, the corner units are the smaller one bedroom, but with larger decks overviewing the lake and Rutherford Road on the other side. The CRU building is split into two levels. None of them is connected to the other. The two upper units are accessed from the surface parking on Cedar Ridge side, and the lower level is accessed from Rutherford, going back to the site plan. So the lower unit is accessed from this side of the street, but it can be accessed from the stairs at the side, from the surface parking, and the upper two units are accessed from the plaza at the front of the surface parking there.
think we say that, again, the owners haven't really quite decided exactly what the uses will be in the CRUs. And likewise, they could be still part of the amenity package for the apartment building. Same with the use underneath, so it could end up just being additional amenity areas for the apartment. So it doesn't take an emphasis of trying to address the street as much as say the business. And again, there's nowhere to park on Rutherford, so we're kind of just kept all the parking and what kind of use happens, whether it's 1 or 2 units on the upper floor is kind of how we're just addressing this. Just kind of remaining flexible. One of the things that's a little bit different, I think it shows up on Victoria's site plan, we just ended up, again, a lot of this boulevard, we don't know what's going to happen in terms of engineering and traffic about what they do or don't want, or what will they allow us. So there's very little space actually. It seems big, but we're actually quite close to the property line with the building. So, and you can see the pathway along here. Victoria talked a little bit more about the whole landscaping scheme. Again, our property line is just along here with the lighter color green. Again, all of this is all existing and going to end up retaining. So there's a mix of trees and ground cover and lots of exposed rock. So I think that's all we have to say. We'll certainly take questions on let Victoria make the screen or
just to comment or more to be parking. I mentioned before, so most of the residential parking is underground. The surface parking is mostly used for the CRU building, visitors of the residential building, and loading the fire truck. Okay, that's it.
Great. Can you pick me up there, Raymond? Hello?
yeah.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, I just wanted to add a couple of comments. We all know that every site has its challenges, and this one has quite a few. Primarily the rock and the steep slope. In addressing that, we're also trying to create a community space for a variety of residents, trying to promote lifestyle, access to the trails, access to the lake. All the units have balconies, common spaces, and access to bus routes. So we're trying to appeal to a mixed use group of residents. The project will be dog friendly, and I think the main point I want to emphasize is, as developers, we are finding ourselves having to adjust to the entire COVID situation and what the future looks like. And in our internal discussions, we're thinking about what space should look like and will look like in the future. So if you want to talk about the CRU specifically, we just didn't feel in our planning process that a retail food vendor would be a likely user. And so we just have some uncertainty at the moment, but we're speculating that it'll be some type of professional boutique-sized office in the space. And back to you, Raymond.
I don't think we really have, so we're kind of limited in time. I'll let Victoria talk next.
You want to go to the second page, Raymond? The one with the photos on? Just to talk briefly about the site, which I'm sure you've all seen. So the site adjacent to Cedar Ridge Road is largely disturbed, and then the sloped area has these really nice little rocky, mossy gullies with there are some invasives there, but there's still nucleus and licorice fern, and there's that large, beautiful outcrop that the building will sit on in that corner. So the idea is that the scheme is based on the idea of all these rocks, because we're going to try and use a lot of the rock on site as feature rocks, and Chris is going to save me some nice big ones, so we can use that. But this photograph just shows the existing site, and then the kind of landscape that I would like to use with rock and trees and grass, just nice big sort of scale trees and rocks to go with the building. And we'll be using quite a lot of climbers, but 3 climbers, and actually that bottom left is Lanark's building on Wallace. It shows how Boston Ivy and Virginia Creeper climbs up very nicely. So, okay, could you go to the other one then, please? So on this one, I just showed the zoning, and the little sort of pink numbers correspond with a little verbiage at the top, but it's basically just dividing the site into different areas of Rutherford Road. And the idea there, as Corinne was saying, is that again, I want to emphasize putting back conifers, because basically we can't really save any trees. We'll try on that southeast on the east boundary, but honestly, it's so tight. So down on Rutherford Road, we like to just amass conifers and use the rocks and all as much indigenous species or sympathetically indigenous species as possible. And then that corner piece we just talked about by the CRU, the idea that there would be some kind of welcoming from the corner, and we just designed this kind of big pathway with benches and steps that could work with big rocks. Just some little vignettes on the left-hand side that I did. So that's sort of 1B, and then 1A and 1B is Rutherford. Just to try and have that presence as you come up Rutherford past the memory care, you still get that nice chunk of evergreen landscape, and that's kind of that area's identity, I guess. And then as you turn on Cedar Ridge, that again, so the streetscape would be clumps of trees rather than individual street trees. So again, you've got a more natural kind of feel to it, and conifers and deciduous. And then the north garden in front of the building will combine a biosphere. I'll let Scott talk a little bit about technical stormwater, but basically reflect the stormwater there and incorporate it into the landscape. So it actually forms a buffer to those units on the ground floor, so they have privacy. And there's a little bit of an actual gathering space on the west side with benches, and be just a nice little route to wander and maybe take your cup of coffee in the morning or something. So there's a little space there that is level and combined with the biosphere and all those kind of rocky kind of plantings. And then there's a kind of slalom route down on the east there, which there's a way down now. We sort of switch back a little bit more of what we could to make it a little bit, but it's certainly not going to be an accessible route, but probably be used by dog walkers and again for the kayaks to come down. And then we'll reforest that with evergreens, with native plants, and hopefully get some arbutus back. Those are a bit tricky. And then on the pathway side, we've got a system of I'm struggling for the word here, long rain gardens that will take the roof water. Those are the kind of little dotted green areas right adjacent to the building. So the rainwater comes through, filters through and down. Yeah, thanks. And then we're hoping to keep as much of that sort of rocky and put the water back into where all those sort of blue conifers are. And I think the idea is that we'll try all sorts of different sizes. Maybe there's some plants, we'll just shoehorn them in wherever what we're left with in terms of crevices and rocks, and try and nuke corrosion what's there now. And we'll hopefully have the water that's coming down and it's sort of mimicking what's happening now. And that's the idea too, and to get the water back into the trees that are along the pathway now, to keep that water, and into the south where the cedars are, which is taking the rainwater also from the memory care, and then so on into and we need to put our water into that grove of cedars to keep them alive, and then so on into Divers Lake. So it's really and a lot of climbing plants, and mostly thinking of things like Virginia creeper or Boston ivy that has its own climbing system, and cascading plants where we can from all the planters which are we can just around the building. So that's really the idea, is to reinstate that as much as we can, the evergreen forest idea. I think that's it.
Scott, do you want to talk about highlight a couple of stormwater issues or anything?
Sure. Yeah, I can sort of just chat about the site servicing maybe quickly before that. We've got there's an existing 150 water service on the Cedar Ridge side, which we'll be using to service both the multifamily building and the CRU building. There's currently no sanitary service to the site, so kind of similar over on the Rutherford Road side. We can install a new service there that'll again service both buildings with a single service. Stormwater management sort of goes back to what Victoria was talking about, where we've got the swale on the sort of the north side of the building there, which is sort of intended to capture drainage mostly from the parking lot and sort of everything up north of the north face of the multifamily building. Go through a swale, and then at the end have an overflow system that goes to a storm sewer that's already kind of at the midpoint of the Rutherford Road frontage there. And then there will also be a detention tank to try and limit the flow rates before they leave the site. And kind of the south of that portion, basically where the multifamily building is going, we're trying to mimic what the site is doing currently, where all the water runs down over the sort of the cedar grove and then eventually goes into the low-lying area beside the memory care site and into Long Lake. Shown a little bit better on the landscape drawings, but there's this big set of planters on the south end that we're going to try and get the roof leaders into and sort of percolate through there, and then let water sort of be spread out by a bunch of outlets that'll go through the treed areas, and really try and slow down that flow rate as much as possible and give every chance to the trees to take it up before having an overflow down kind of along that Lakeview Trail, which will carry it down to the lake.
Good there?
Yeah, I think that's about it. Yeah, if there's any questions.
Are there any other comments, Chris, in terms of landscape or civil that you wanted to highlight that we missed?
Yeah, I would just add that, again, the site's challenging, so from a water retention and management perspective, I think that we've used a variety of containment design, and we are really trying to, as Victoria touched on earlier, keep the surrounding trees and the remainder of the treed area of the site in a natural condition, because the public walking trail there, which connects up with other properties and the lake, it has natural trees on either side of it. So again, just trying to maintain a forest feel rather than planting flowering trees. So as many indigenous type species as possible.
Does anybody else from our team have anything? I guess we'll leave it up or turn it over to the design panel.
Okay, thank you very much. I will ask design panel members, does anyone have any questions for staff initially before we have questions and comments to the applicant? Let's scroll through. Doesn't look like it. Oh, there's Tyler. Hi, Tyler. Okay, so I will open it up to questions and comments to the applicant, or applicants, whatever. And again, random screen selection. I'm going to start with Kevin.
Okay. First of all, can you turn off the share content, Raymond?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Yeah. Very nice presentation, you guys. Obviously a very good team there that you have. I really like the siting of the building. Normally I don't like to see parking in front of the building. I like surface parking, but there isn't a lot there. I like the form and character, the use of materials, the landscape concept, the replacement of a lot of evergreen trees is definitely going to help the site. It's a beautiful site as it is. I like the use of the climbers on the building, Victoria, and other things. The amenity space on that fourth floor is going to be very, very special. It's very nice that you designed that, Raymond. And I like how you design, I'm not sure if this is Victoria or Raymond, how you design surface parking at the front of the building. I think it's very cleverly designed, and I like that a lot. Things as far as questions and considerations, form and character. It's funny, Raymond, you mentioned the CRU building, and when I first looked at the renderings, the building did seem to look more like an amenity space building for the building, and I was going to ask you whether or not you would consider changing that, but to at least make it look more differentiate from the main building. I'm not sure if that could be probably an on-site call if you end up getting some possible tenants for that space. Maybe you could look at making that building a little bit more unique. And did you give that any thought at all, Raymond?
We have. I guess the problem is we just don't really know in the end how that building's going to get used ultimately. We just guess it so it's kind of similar to the main apartment building. Again, it's not going to be stratified off or anything like that. So the rental,
right?
Yeah, it'll be rental suites as well.
Okay. And that building is going to have rooftop equipment, I take it, correct? The CRU?
No, we're actually going to put probably heat pumps down on the ground between.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. The entry, the main entry to the building is recessed back, and loses a little bit of definition. It's really not that noticeable. I mean, I guess you're sort of relying on the width of the main walkway going in as sort of being the highlight to enter the building. Have you or Victoria given any thought as to how to treat that, especially the hardscape surfaces in that area, and look at possibly including other features such as public art to make the wayfinding a little bit better to the entrance?
I'll let Victoria talk about, but I mean, we did talk about, the fire truck access doesn't have to come all the way right to the canopy, and so there was talk of maybe breaking that up a little bit, whether there's a few more boulders or something. We're also going to use it or double it for some of the loading that won't happen in smaller stalls. So again, it's just kind of a multi-use space, so it's quite wide.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not sure if there's something you could do sort of at the transition to the other sidewalks or something there in the landscape bits to I guess maybe highlight the entranceway or add to the wayfinding by adding features like public art.
One of the things that on my little illustrative sheet, Kevin has put the entrance in Urban Plaza, and the idea that I would try and that illustration right in the middle of the top there, that was sort of what I had envisaged, as a kind of to try and find any boulders that had nice flat sitting areas, and then maybe where I actually had them all over there until Raymond informed me that a fire truck had to get in there, so I had to kind of clear it out. So the idea is that you would, that where it can narrow, we would move the boulders in and kind of mess up that straight run, and with seeding kind of boulders and trees, but keep it kind of open so you can see through. But that image there is kind of the idea that I had. So that's kind of because I agree it needs, that was sort of something that got lost. And I kind of cleaned the whole thing up, but I think I can go back in and narrow it a little bit. Not where the fire truck goes, but as it gets closer to the building. But yeah, I think I need to do something with that intersection for sure.
Okay. Yeah, it's just that it's very difficult sometimes when you look at these renderings, and especially with the colors. I know that area sort of has a darker color to it, which does kind of make it a little bit unique. But anything you can do with the hardscape surfaces there to make it feel a little bit more identifiable and a little bit nicer as an entrance, because it's obviously very wide. So anything you can do with that, I think, would turn really nice. Have you designed any of the garbage enclosure materials at all? Is it?
We can give you a little hint with, we have a model of it too that you can take a peek at.
Is it going to be similar to like the CRU as far as the style? Okay.
A similar style, a simpler style, and then just gray fiber cement clad on the outside, round doors or wood doors, and an open kind of design ceiling so that it can breathe.
Okay, no, it looks good. I like the doors. So my final question is, are there going to be bike racks at the entrance of the residential building and on both levels of the CRU?
So there is a bike rack that it's showing actually on the PDF on the site plan. So there is under there. There are bikes at the corner of the CRU building, and we were planning to add a couple of bike racks at the entrance of the residential building there for visitors.
You might, are you having one at the bottom of the CRU on Rutherford Road? On Cedar Ridge, actually, not on the bottom at the moment. Yeah.
We had a feeling there'd probably be more amenity space for the apartment building, so that was our thought.
Yeah, I was just wondering if the bottom unit is ever going to be used for something like if it would be a rental unit, whether or not it'd be a good idea to put a bike rack down there as well.
Challenge is it's not extremely visible from the street there because it's a depression. As you can see, the number of steps going down from the corner, it's relatively low there. Yeah, from a security point of view, I think it's better to park your bike that far.
Okay, that's all I have. Other than Raymond, have you done any sort of study relating to this is with respect to the height variance you're asking for over 8 feet for height variance. And did you do any sort of study as to whether or not that height and what impact it might do for potential lake views from both the Grand Hotel and the Songbird Place apartments? Is it going to do those buildings?
Songbird there, because again, essentially the site's completely treed, or the trees are quite big there, so they don't have any it is right now. Yeah.
Okay, I was just curious because if this probably will go past council, and whether or not after they get notified whether or not they're going to be complaining about that.
Okay.
Aside from that, very nice project, well done. Thank you.
The property was purchased from the hotel owners originally, so.
Okay.
There.
Good. Thank you, Raymond. Thank you, Victoria. Chris.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. Next up, Marie. Where's Marie? There she is.
We don't hear her.
There she goes.
There we go.
There we go.
Thank you, Raymond and Kareem. Nice job. It's obviously a difficult site, but a great site with some interesting features, especially its proximity to the lake. And but I thought the project does a really good job job of sort of working with the landscape, the slope, and, providing a lot of different units in one building. And I thought you resolved some of the issues that were brought up in the staff comments, like dealing with the concrete walls. I like your addition of the planters to trying to break that wall up a little bit because it was sort of dominant. I thought you came up with some good solutions with that. And they really like the landscaping, the front entrance, the way you put the road in there, and really like your landscape plan, Victoria, in that you're keeping with the natural landscape. I think your idea of sort of marking the front entrance with the rocks and working with that, and not having lawns, but maybe lots of native plants in there, just keeping with that, it'll be really striking. So. And my only concern I think that I have left was the question that Kevin had brought up about the height and whether you had looked at that, because with the variance, I wondered how it was going to impede on the Grand Hotel. Although when I was standing on the site, I realized with your drive and the street, you're quite a distance from it as well. So assuming that's been worked out. But otherwise, a great project, and thanks for your presentation.
Great. Thank you, Marie. Tyler? There it is.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. That was really well done, and my comments really sort of were built on staff, and I think they've sort of been adequately addressed. And so I'm not going to echo everyone else's comments, but a good project, and assuming it passes the panel and council, I look forward to seeing it built.
Thank you. Kate?
Okay. Thank you for your presentation, everyone. I agree with what mostly has been said. And actually, I realized I did have a question of clarification. I wasn't quite understanding the additional planting planters from the drawings that were submitted to the drawings we were shown today. Was there something on the walls or something?
So on the lower parquet, we added a couple of planters just to smoothen out.
Oh, okay.
So there's a planter on this side and 2 more on the other side here.
Okay, I see, yeah.
Show the reveals of the concrete and the uncolored panel.
Yes, okay, yeah. Okay, that's good.
And another planter on Rutherford's side here.
Okay, yeah, okay, good. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood what's the difference. I am glad too, Victoria. I really like how you've changed the corner, and I think it develops into something more interesting, and and that will reflect the site. And I know you have chosen a plant palette that really works with the site and helps keep that feeling of the rocky outcrop and the tall trees. My only one question was, when I heard those sort of what I want to call planters on the front of the park on the south side that are for water, I was sort of a little bit disappointed because I know you could grow taller conifers in there potentially. And I just wondered if you sort of thought it, like if there was room for that to happen alongside the water management or not.
I will make one comment. One of the changes that we made was the lower planters. Okay, oh, sorry.
Do you want to go to the 3D model?
We haven't done 3D. Here, I'll just quickly show you what we did that's a little bit different. The other thing is that we also bumped out these planters a little bit to give Victoria a little bit of room to plant some conifers with the other plants that are along the edge here.
Oh, okay.
It also breaks up the wall a little bit as you're kind of walking along the pathway.
So is that, but mostly it's for water, is that correct? Or what? Like, is it like a, yeah, okay. But are you going to plant in it?
Yeah.
Yes, I was going to plant mostly sort of conventional bioswale type plants, but shrub stuff. I mean, I thought maybe I could get in some red twig dogwood and so on, that kind of thing, and amelanchids and stuff. But one of the reasons I didn't think it was, I actually thought that was a good solution was I'm not sure you would want to plant the conifers that close to the building because of the light. Eventually, they would go up and block the light. Whereas I chose to my little blue stars there. I thought that would be better if I put them a little bit further away. So that was also, I thought, oh, that would work because it would be sort of green. You'd have some kind of, it wouldn't be high, but I guess that was my thinking.
I appreciate that. I'm just asking. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I know. I went back and forth about that too. But the idea is that maybe what I should do is, now I've got a little bit more room, is put something that's taller than, say, the red twig dogwood, but would just come up to the parquet level. If I could get some shrubby stuff that covers up to them, and then you're covering that, but you're still allowing the light in. So maybe that's a compromise.
And then I had one last question for Raymond. The staff made a comment about the color of the walls of the parkade, and I just wondered, especially near the rock outcrop, and I just wondered what you thought of that. I think there was a suggestion of it darker or matching the rock outcrop or something. I just wondered your comment.
I don't have a copy of the staff report, so I don't.
Oh, okay.
So there's a comment about the color answer.
Yeah, let me see here. I just wondered, where was it?
We're showing on this version a little bit, it's just maybe changing the texture of the concrete. And we're playing around with some ideas, maybe it's just not straight forming and maybe it's board formed, or we ripple the edges of the concrete just after it's poured, whatever. I mean, maybe we're lucky to end up with a couple large boulders that are suitable to stack or something. It's just try to keep it as natural as we can, and certainly at least up to the parquet level, and then wait till all get treated and grow over, and the plants are over, and the moss and everything else will just kind of take over time. So it's a darker color than the concrete up above.
Okay. Yeah. No. And the renderings that you provide today, I think that all the different elements you have added really improves that wall. I'm happy to see that. But other than that, anyway, I have no more comments. Thank you very much. I think this fits in well with the existing buildings and the future buildings. So, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Kate. Tony.
Thank you. Excellent presentation, excellent design, excellent landscaping. I'm not going to repeat everything else that everybody has said, but I just wanted to touch on one or two minor things to do with the form and character. I really like the very clean look of the building, very contemporary, and very refreshing. I think, though, that the vertical center core of the building is very useful to kind of break the building into two wings, because it's a very long building, obviously, and it does end at that point. And I guess I would encourage you to really think to kind of almost like disappear that vertical center. The temptation is to make an accent out of it. I'm doing exactly the opposite, make it look more like a radial, I guess, between the two wings. And I think that will even strengthen your design and accent its highlights even more than it already does. I very much like the landscape approach with the rocks and so forth. And the only thing I'd add is on the commercial building in the corner, it seems kind of hesitant, and I don't really understand it in terms of massing and how it fits with the main building. It looks very tentative. It really doesn't have any sort of corner street presence. It's a very prominent location on the site, but it just sits there sort of a blank box almost. To kind of emphasize that, I don't know why I would have a sloped roof on it, but everything else is horizontal. I think it would tie in better with the main building if the roof were horizontal rather than sloped, but that's up to you. And then I think Kevin made the comment of, making it much more of a contrasting building. I could see that being quite a successful approach. I could also see tying in much closer to the existing building so that it would seem a little more all of one piece. So kind of two different approaches, but right now it's kind of in the middle. It's not really doing one or the other. And I think that perhaps could deserves a little more attention to be a little more successful part of the whole complex. That's about it, except that I really hope that the planting along the downhill side that you put in really does in fact creep over and down the walls, as well as the vines and ivy and whatnot creeps up it, because it's going to really go along a lot to soften and integrate that whole sort of stepping layered look into the existing landscape. I think it could be great. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Tony. I had the pleasure or challenge or whatever of going last. It's a good one today. I think most of the comments that I had written down have already been asked or questions, but there are a couple that haven't. And I think my biggest challenge with this one is the two-story exposed parkade. We've had other projects come through with these really large exposed parkades, and it's always a challenge. So I have a couple of questions. The first one is, it's a leading question, but Raymond, did you guys ever discuss the possibility of having an extra half floor of residential on the downslope side?
We certainly talked about it. We certainly talked even with staff about the issue of even townhouses and stuff along Rutherford, but we just felt it just wasn't really appropriate to do that. The problem is then we need more parking, which also then means we have to go down more for a deliver. Having another floor, it's bad enough to have 2 levels of parking. It's just such a steep drop from Cedar Ridge Place down to there, because again, you're not just having 2 levels of parking. You also got another story and a half that's covered up by those planter walls. It's a huge drop, right? Yeah. And the terrain, a lot of what you see on the pathway is actually not part of our property, so it should be access of that, about getting to that. So.
Yeah, because I noticed that you have a little bit of density that's been left over, but I can see there's a challenge. Yeah. Failing higher. Failing that, it looks right now that the openings into the parkade are open. Is that correct? Like, are they just openings in the concrete wall?
Yeah, right now they're opening. Yeah.
Because my concern with that, if we're going to have this kind of 2-story exposed parkade, we all know what the underside of the slab in a parkade looks like, and that's what you're going to be looking up at from the street. So I was wondering if you had considered or would consider some kind of a mesh screen or something on those openings, so you still have your ventilation, but it just cuts the view into the parkade from down below.
Yeah, we've talked about that internally. So, yeah. We're not. I guess it's mainly the view from the walkways what would be visible. But again, as those trees come up, we're not really going to see much of anything at all down there. So I think that's our view. I guess that's a dilemma with the original staff comment was what does it look like right now since it's finished versus what's going to grow into over time. So right. It's quite dense in there. We won't even know it's there. So.
Okay, and then the last question, and it kind of echoes Tony's comment. I totally agree about the, I'll call it the de-emphasis, or the making the main entry tower or stack a little bit different and sort of de-emphasized and subtle, so that the main wings stand out. But the one thing I did like is that that's the one element that does actually drop all the way down the grade on the park side. And I think I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Is there any opportunity to have an access from that lower level down to the walkway, or is it just too steep?
Just too steep. We looked at that because in that middle part where it was broken, we were actually hoping to bring the elevator all the way down so people could just walk out onto the pathway, but that's just too challenging. And plus, we'd have to see what the rock elevation, not even on our property, but on the city right of way. So, again, that pathway staff and engineering have talked about it being a lit pathway along there. And then eventually they want it all paved from our site to the South Drive in Long Lake site. So,
Right.
yeah, and we tried to kind of walk around there. Just again, we're going to disturb too much of the vegetation and other covers. We just have to decide. If people need to go by wheelchairs, or if for some reason they have kayaks and they want to wheel them down, then we'll go around the actual sidewalk along Rutherford and around. You can actually make it all the way around in front of the memory care center and go all the way down. There's no real good access for other than hand carrying your kayak. There's probably more people like with wakeboards and that kind of thing that probably use it. So.
Okay, but otherwise, yeah, I confer with everybody else. It's a well done, well presented project. We always want to try and hide those parkades, but it doesn't always work. So, thank you for your presentation. I'm going to poll through panel members, but I heard lots of good comments and some minor suggestions, but I didn't actually really hear any strong recommendations, except possibly Tony's comment about and my echoing of it about the differentiation of the main entrance portion, and maybe some consideration of the landscape design treatment leading to the front entrance that came from Kevin and Kate. Did you guys have any other really strong recommendations that you wanted to include?
Well, I was just gonna, I don't know, nobody else picked up on it, but my concern about the sort of neutrality, if you will, of the commercial building,
Right.
being, not having as much attention as I think perhaps it could stand, but if I'm the only one on the panel that's concerned about that, then we don't have to pursue it. But.
I concur with you on that, Tony, as well. I had sort of missed that, and I agree with you on that. It's sort of like a blank spot there. It's just there.
Yeah. One of the challenges we were faced with is with the zoning and the location of the property. There was a certain percentage of wall area that we had to produce facing Rutherford Road, and so we debated whether we created one structure or peeled off this smaller CRU building to try and reduce massing, create a little more interest, and just make the overall project look better. So that's the root of it. I appreciate your comments, and we could certainly take a look at making some adjustments.
I think, Tony, your comment is a perfect reflection of our tentativeness about what that building will actually get used in the end as we get closer. So.
I just think it's an opportunity that you haven't quite capitalized on yet, but hopefully there's an opportunity there for you.
Yeah, I would agree with Tony. I think it looks like, the way it stands now, it looks like it's a work in progress. And I think it's either going in a different direction, a different color scheme, or something. It is kind of boxy, and so even something more articulated there could definitely help the project. So I think that would be a good idea to look at that and sort of of address other options for the form and character of the CRU.
Okay. I'm just writing down, sorry. And then, yeah, Kevin, I don't think you really had, other than your comments about the entryway, I don't think you had any real strong recommendations.
Yeah, just that was the only one, is really to look at the hardscape surfaces and that area. And I know Victoria did explain that hopefully she can get some nice flat stones, do some benches in that area. But anything else that she can do to enhance the experience coming through that wide walkway, I think would definitely work well to make the experience better coming into the building.
Okay.
Sorry, Charles, I didn't mention that, but I agree with Kevin. I think the entrance could reflect sort of what Victoria did over by the little small building. If they sort of start to look similar, would be great.
Okay. Okay, so I've got, I think I've got 3 recommendations. So number 1 would be consideration of the material, it's not really a form and character, but the entrance massing between the 2 buildings to de-emphasize it. Consideration of alternate approaches to the CRU building, whether that's radically different or taking cues from the existing main building, and consideration of the entrance walkway, landscape paving, and overall experience. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it sounds good to me.
Okay, could I ask for a motion?
Before we do you want anybody want to discuss the variances?
Oh, right.
There's 3 variances.
We do have variances.
Yeah, there's height and
setbacks.
Front and rear.
Yeah, and I did check because I wasn't clear at first, but Rutherford is the front. So the front setback is toward Rutherford Road, and the rear is towards to the lake.
Yes.
I have no problems with any of the variances.
Okay. Did anyone have any particular comments to the variances? No? Okay, seeing none.
I will make a motion then, unless anybody has anything else to discuss.
Motion away.
Okay, so I would make a motion to accept the application as presented with support for those 3 variances and with those 3 recommendations that you have included.
Seconded by Tony. Any further comments or discussion? I'm gonna scroll my screen here. Everybody's gone black. Okay, I don't think nope. So I will call the question. All those in favor? I don't know where to click on my thumb.
Oh, do we need to do something?
Okay, I think that was unanimous.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good job, you.
Yeah, and I will, I don't think we have to do a motion to adjourn, do we? We did our minutes already, so we can adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much.
Night, everybody.
Thank you.
Night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Are you recording? Is it